Hello, today I'm going to do my April wrap up. I'm so excited to do this. I have read 11 books. Let that sink in. 11 books. Considering last month I read 1 book, this is wow. I'm just going to hop straight into it. I read Roald Dahl's Matilda. I thought this was okay. I didn't overly love it. I still think James and Giant Peach is his best work. It's such a good book. But yeah, I thought Matilda was okay. It's very different from the film with Danny DeVito in it. There's a lot of stuff in the film that's not in the book at all. The first bit of the book reads like a series of short stories because she hasn't started school. They don't really lead on to each other, just a series of little tricks she plays on her parents. But yeah, it was okay. I'll show you the drawings, which are by Quentin Blake, which I love Quentin Blake so much. So yeah, I have often said I feel like Quentin Blake's drawings are better than the actual storyline for me personally. I then read Neil Gaiman's Coraline, and again it was the same kind of thing. The illustrations are fantastic by Chris Riddell. He's got his own series now called Goth Girl, but the storyline was just okay. It's about a girl and she moves into this new house. Her parents are obviously very stressed about moving and everything, and she goes for a secret door in the wall, and it's her life but everything's perfect, and her parents have buttons for eyes, and they say to her, you have to have buttons for eyes and then you can come join us. Illustrations are really good by Chris Riddell. I actually marked one here. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. One thing I would say though that was a weird format for this book is they had the illustrations to the chapter before the chapter. So you've got this illustration and then that illustration happens in chapter 5. So you'll be reading it and be like, oh yeah, that was that. So it's kind of a little bit of a spoiler in a way, especially that one was a big spoiler within it. I've seen the film of this, and the film is like a animation thing that is so good. This is very, very similar to Alice in Wonderland if you actually think about it. Like, you've got a little girl, she goes through a door, Alice goes down the rabbit hole. You've got a cat that talks nonsense in this, the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. Her neighbour upstairs is a man who's mental, the Mad Hatter, and downstairs you've got 2 women who remind me so much of Tweedledee and Tweedledum. So I would just say that as well. It's not like a criticism, I'm just saying it is like a weird kind of quirky twist on Alice in Wonderland, I would say. Next up, I read 2 graphic novels. I read this one which is kind of like children's fiction as well. It's by Raina Telgemeier. I don't really know how to say it, but Sisters. The animation in it, it's very kind of cutesy, kind of reminds me of Cartoon Network. They go on a road trip to see their family, and it's a girl, her little brother and her little sister and her mum that go, and it's about their car journey, and she doesn't really get on with her sister. And it flashes back to before her sister was born, and she was so excited to get a sister and everything, and then when her sister arrived she realised, oh, we don't get on. And it's kind of that, and it's nice. I then read Amulet. The style is quite kind of whimsical. This is basically about a girl and a boy and their mum have to move into this new house, and when they move into the house, something kidnaps their mum, and so to get their mum back they have to go into like this mystical, wonderful world, and it's really good. I thought the very beginning bit was fantastic. It was really sad, and then it kind of slowed a little bit, and then it really picked up, and there's other little characters in it. Oh, it's so sweet, and it's all about like love, and oh, I can't wait to read the next one. I love all the characters. It's just nice. For YA, I read 1 book. This is Kiss Me Kill Me by Lauren Henderson, and this is the ugliest book cover I've ever seen. It's like some kind of erotica, you know, Prince and the Stablemade. Ugh. It's about a girl who she kisses a boy, he drops down dead, she's got to find out why he died. And it's not a kind of vampire, you know, witch-esque kind of thing, which would make you believe it was with this cover. It's not. There's an actual reason, and she needs to find out who killed him and all this different stuff to clear her own name. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was quite a beautiful book at times. I then read a bit of historical fiction. This is Tracy Chevalier, The Blue Version. Tracy Chevalier wrote The Girl with the Pearl Earring. This is Tracy Chevalier's Girl with the Pearl Earring, and it's one of my favourite books. This, however, was not the same. There's 2 storylines going in. So one is of a lady called Isabel, this lady here, living in olden day in France, and she's kind of travelling around France with her family, trying to be safe. Her husband is an absolute pig who treats her like dirt. The modern day story in this is that a American woman is moving to France and she's trying to get involved with the French community and failing, and she might have an affair on her husband. So the olden day story was like 5 out of 5 stars. The new day one was just boring as hell. Next up, I read Thomas Harris. He wrote the whole Hannibal Lecter, the cannibal, and Silence of the Lambs is a fantastic film. But this. First up, you got Red Dragon. I thought Red Dragon was going to be about them capturing him. Nope. You've got a serial killer, and then they go and question Hannibal Lecter in his like cell to see if he can give them any clues or information. And that's it. A big problem with Thomas Harris for me personally is that a lot of the characters in it were incredibly sexist. Some of the men in it were really used like rape terminology to talk about what they wanted to do to women in the book, and it wasn't ever referenced. Because right at the beginning, this man says this terrible thing, these two men are talking about this woman, and they say this terrible thing they want to do to her. It's really violent, it's like rape, and it's kind of never mentioned again. It's just like, oh yeah, men, lads. Silence of the Lambs, you got Clarice Starling. She is the main character. She's a woman. She's a trainee police officer, and they send her to go and talk to Hannibal Lecter to see if she can get any information, because there is a serial killer. Again, same premise, same premise. I felt like Silence of the Lambs was the better of the two, but I still felt it's quite weak. Hannibal Lecter is hardly in either of them, to be fair, and he kind of carries the books. The amount of sexism Starling gets in Silence of the Lambs is quite shocking. Just everyone being like, oh, the police have gone to the girls, you know, and people just looking at her up and down. And the last 3 books I'm going to show you are classics. First up, I read George Orwell's Animal Farm. I loved it. It's fantastic. It's about politics, but I've done its own video review, so I'll link that down below. Then read Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House. This is the play. Oh my god, this is good. This book came out in 1879. I made notes. I just love it. I think it's so good. It's basically about a woman who... how do I explain this? Because it's all very complicated. You've got a husband who's very strong, very domineering, and then you've got this woman who plays the character. She's very weak, she's very meek, she's, you know, all like that. But it's funny because she's actually a very strong person, and he got very ill and they needed money, and she said, oh, I got this money from a relative. But that's a lie. She actually got that money from someone. She got a loan. And so it's funny because he's like, oh darling, you need me to look after you, and she's like, oh yes, when really you know as an audience that she's the one looking after him, and she's the one that's the reason they're not poor. 5 out of 5 stars. That was one of the best books I've read this year. Last but not least, I read The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark or Spank. Yeah, I thought it was okay. It's basically about this teacher who's a bit weird called Miss Jean Brodie, and she has this called the Brodie set, and it's a set of girls that she's chosen. They're all good at one thing, but it's odd because like one of them's good at being the idiot and being blamed for everything. One of them's good at sex. Like, it's all odd. They all talk about different stuff that is not on the school curriculum. And Miss Jean Brodie's odd, and it also flashbacks to the girls when they're adults talking about Miss Jean Brodie and talking about what she taught them and whether it has impacted their life. At times it was good and I was interested, but you know, it was all kind of about one of the girls betrayed her. What girl was it? Blah, blah, going on and on and on. And that's it. That's all the books that I read. Hopefully next month I can read as many books as this. If you have any opinions on my opinions on opinions on opinions, then please let me know. But do you like this new setup, or is it a bit weird? I'm not sure. It kind of feels like a book grave. Like they're all just gonna kind of topple on top of me on one of the videos and I'll be like, help, help, and there'll be no one here. It feels a bit like that.